Hello, and welcome to A Portion Ministries audio reading and exhortation of the book of Daniel out of the Passion Translation. On this recording, we're at Daniel chapter 1. Let's get into the screen share. I'll be brief. Daniel chapter 1, Daniel and his friends in the court of the king. So at verse 1, it was the third year of the reign of Jehoram, king of Judah. You can see that reference there. When Nebuchadnezzar, which Nebuchadnezzar means Nebo will protect the king or the crown. Nebo was the Babylonian god. The name Nebuchadnezzar appears 32 times in the first 5 chapters of Daniel. So Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, marched on Jerusalem and besieged the city. Verse 2, my Lord, this is the Hebrew word Adonai and can be translated my master or my Lord, capital L, Lord. Daniel uses this word 10 times in his prayer of chapter 9. So my Lord gave Nebuchadnezzar victory over King Jehoram and permitted the Babylonian ruler to remove some of the sacred vessels. And so the word Makest doesn't quite seem to fit in this sentence. It is literally the Lord gave victory to Nebuchadnezzar to bring to an end or to cut off the holy vessels. The verb kwasa is most used to denote the end of a period of time, to cut off one season for the next to come. This hints that the cutting off of temple worship, the kingdom of Judah and its kings and Judah's rule as they are taken into captivity. And so some of the sacred vessels are furnishings belonging to the temple to the true God. Nebuchadnezzar carried them away to the land of Babylon. One moment, I have something going on my computer. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar carried them away to the land of Babylon or Shinar. At the time the book of Daniel was written, this was simply another name for the country of Babylonia and its capital city of Babylon, and placed the sacred vessels into the temple treasury of his own gods. Later, the king ordered Ashpenaz, his chief officer. Although the Hebrew uses the word for eunuch, the term evolved to mean any trusted official of the king without any reference to the anatomy of the person. It was not Ashpenaz's physical status in focus, but the responsibility the king had given to him for the oversight of his affairs. Daniel and Joseph shared many parallels. Ashpenaz was to Daniel what Potiphar was to Joseph. Wow, that's good. He was to Daniel what Potiphar was to Joseph. Daniel could be considered the Bible's second Joseph. Oh, that's a good nugget. So his chief officer to select a certain number of youths, or Yeled, which implied in Hebrew it's Yeled. It implies that these young men were past adolescence. Many scholars believe Daniel was a young teenager when taken into Babylonian captivity. So many number of youths from the royal or noble families of the Israelites who would be suitable for service in the king's palace. They were to be handsome young men without defect. The Hebrew is neum. It can mean without any physical deformity and or without moral defilement. They were to be well-versed in every branch of wisdom. They were to be intelligent, knowers of knowledge. Some form or another of this Hebrew word is found 18 times in chapter 2. They were to be discerning. This is who we are to be. Possibly a transitive verb, causing one to understand. That is one who is skilled in instructing and convincing others. They were to be qualified for the royal service, or having the ability, the confidence, the self-control to stand in the king's palace. Ashpenaz was instructed to teach them the culture, the literature, and the language, that is the Aramaic language of the Babylonians. The king provided them with a daily allowance, according to its day. See Luke 11, verse 3. I need to look at that later. A daily allowance of the best food and wine from the king's table. For 3 years, they were to receive a thorough education, after which they would enter the king's service, or they would stand before the king. Among those men of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The meanings of the Hebrew men's names are: God is my judge, that's Daniel. Yah has been gracious to me, that's Hananiah. Who is like God, or his mother asked God for him, that's Mishael. and Yah has helped me. That's Azariah. I like those names. I need to meditate on that. The medieval rabbi Sadia Goan identifies these four as the descendants of King Hezekiah. But the chief official of the palace gave them Babylonian names. Daniel he called Belshazzar, guard his life. Hananiah he called Shadrach, which is I am very fearful of God. Mishael he called Meshach, possibly I am of little account, or the shadow of the prince. And Azariah he called Abednego, and servant of the shining one, or servant of Nabu. Look, he really was trying to change their identity. If you change my language, you change my name, you're trying to change my identity. Help Jesus. However, Daniel determined in his heart not to contaminate himself, not to estrange himself. The verb here is gael, which in its basic qual voicing means to redeem or to avenge. It is not the word typically used for defilement. However, in its hippo form or tense here, yet yitgael, it does carry the reflexive sense of defile or contaminate oneself. So that is an appropriate alternate reading to estrange oneself. In this context, it can carry the meaning of being estranged from the priesthood, Nehemiah 13:29, and all Babylonian Assyrian food was considered ritually unclean. See that in Ezekiel 4, verse 13, and Hosea 9:3-4. That's a good note too. In a sense, when Daniel rejected the food of Babylon, he was also rejecting the identity of the name given to him in verse 7. Verses 7 and 8 are close parallels. Daniel's allegiance was not to Babylon, but to the King of Glory. Yeah, so he purposed not to contaminate himself with the food and the wine from the royal table, so he begged the chief official to exempt him from the royal diet. Then God moved on the heart of the chief official to show Daniel favor, hesed, unearned love, and compassion, loyal love and mercy. Here we see God giving Daniel favor in the eyes of an unbeliever. God can indeed use others to demonstrate his love toward us. But he warned Daniel, my lord, the king has ordered your meat and drink, and I fear that he will notice if your face starts looking worse or discontented than the other young men your age, you could put my life in jeopardy with the king. Daniel then appealed to the overseer, whom the chief officer put in charge over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Daniel said to him, test us, your servants, for 10 days. Give us only seeds to eat and water to drink. The predominant meaning of the Hebrew word hazeroim is something sown or that which is produced by seeds, possibly vegetables. See Ezekiel 4, verse 9-13. Daniel ate the food associated with exile. In a metaphoric sense, Daniel ate the seeds of the kingdom. Good Jesus. Then afterward, compare our appearance with those of the young men who eat the king's food. Then you can decide what to do with us. So the overseer agreed to do what they requested and tested them for 10 days. And when the 10 days were completed, they looked healthier and had even gained weight. The 4 Hebrew men were in better physical condition compared to any of the others who had eaten their food from the royal table. So the guard replaced their diet of royal food with wine and vegetables and water. Wine and vegetable and water. So here are 4 exceptional young men at verse 17. God imparted insight and skill in every aspect of literature and science. The Bible is not negative toward literature and science. However, all knowledge and revelation need to come from God, who is the source of insight and truth. All truth is God's truth. Come on. This is volume 5 right here. So in every aspect of literature and science to the 4 Hebrew men, Daniel also had the unique gift of interpreting every kind of supernatural vision and dream. So the Hebrew word for vision is hazan and is found more than 30 times in the book of Daniel. Verse 18, at the end of the period that the king had assigned for their training, the chief of the palace stewards brought them to Nebuchadnezzar's court. The king interviewed them all, and among all the young men, he found none to equal Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So the king chose them to serve as his advisors. And when the king questioned them on any point of wisdom or understanding, the wisdom of understanding, he found them 10 times superior to the magicians, enchanters, and enchanters in his entire kingdom. The Hebrew word Ashaphath, I'm butchering that word, it can be understood as someone who has a mystical power to deflect from another person any harmful events that may have been revealed to him in a dream. It could also be translated astrologist or conjurer. And Daniel continued there in Babylon as a royal advisor until the time of Cyrus became king, or until the first year of King Cyrus, that is the first year of his reign after conquering Babylon. All right, this concludes Daniel chapter 1. I know that in one of my books, I believe it's in volume 2, I talk about the story of Daniel. And so I want to go and listen to that before I will be doing one chapter a day each morning. So see you on tomorrow as we do Daniel chapter 2. Be blessed.